Have you ever cared so deeply for someone that when they left or grew distant, it felt like a part of you left with them? You shared moments, memories, maybe even parts of your identity, and then suddenly, their absence becomes a presence of its own, heavy, confusing, and hard to carry. You find yourself replaying conversations in the dead of night, searching for clues you might have missed, for a different word you could have said, for a moment where you might have turned the tide. You ask yourself, how do I let go of someone who still lives in my thoughts? How do I stop feeling so attached without becoming bitter or numb? You feel haunted, not by a ghost in the traditional sense, but by the ghost of a connection, the ghost of a future that will never be. This feeling, this emotional entanglement, is one of the most profound and universal sources of human suffering. We are taught that to love is to attach, to merge, to become intertwined. But what happens when the thing we are attached to is removed? We are left feeling raw, exposed, and fundamentally incomplete. We believe our pain is a measure of our love, and so we hold on to it, thinking that to let go of the pain would be to betray the memory of what we once had. But what if there was another way? A way to care deeply, to love fully, but to remain whole, grounded, and sovereign within yourself, regardless of who comes or goes. This is where the timeless wisdom of the Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, offers not a cure, but a compass. They were men who navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics, personal loss, and exile. They faced death, betrayal, and the chaos of the world, and yet they cultivated a state of inner tranquility, a fortress of the mind that no external storm could breach. They did not achieve this by suppressing their emotions, but by understanding and mastering them. They taught us not to stop caring, but to stop clinging. There is a universe of difference between those two things. Clinging is born of fear, fear of loss, fear of being alone, fear of not being enough. It is an attempt to control the uncontrollable, to demand permanence from a world that is defined by change. Caring, on the other hand, is born of virtue. It is the act of giving, connecting, and loving without making your inner peace conditional on the outcome. In this journey together, we will explore 5 powerful Stoic rules to help you practice the art of emotional detachment. This is not a guide to becoming cold, unfeeling, or distant. On the contrary, it is a guide to becoming so fundamentally secure in your own being that you can engage with the world more openly and lovingly, because your worth is no longer on the line. It is about building an inner citadel so resilient that you can afford to be gentle. If any part of you feels ready to lay down the weight of the ghosts you have been carrying, if you are ready to reclaim your peace and find a strength that depends on no one but yourself, then stay with me. What you are about to find here is not just a philosophy, it is a homecoming. Section 1, The Illusion of Permanence, Embracing the River of Life. Heraclitus, a philosopher who predated the Stoics but deeply influenced their thinking, famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." This simple, profound image is the foundation of our first Stoic rule: understand and accept the impermanence of all things. Why do we suffer so deeply when a relationship ends, a friendship fades, or a chapter of our life closes? The pain is not just in the absence, but in the shock. We are shocked because, on some deep, often unconscious level, we believed it would last forever. We build our emotional homes on the assumption of permanence, and when the ground inevitably shifts, we are left feeling homeless and betrayed, not by the person, but by life itself. The Stoics saw this as a fundamental error in perception. They taught that the universe is in a constant state of flux. Everything is changing, always. Stars are born and die. Mountains rise and erode. Seasons turn. And our lives, our relationships, our bodies, our emotions, they are all part of this same cosmic river. To resist this flow is to declare war on reality itself. And that is a war you can never win. Seneca, in his letters, often wrote about the nature of fortune and loss. He advised his friend Lucilius not to be surprised by misfortune, but to expect it. He said, "What is not started today is not finished tomorrow. All things are rushing onward, they are all in the stream of time." We get attached not just to people, but to an idea of people, an idea that they will always be who they are to us right now. We take a snapshot of a moment, of a feeling, of a connection, and we frame it in our minds as the definitive picture. But life is not a photograph, it is a motion picture. People grow, they change, their priorities shift, their feelings evolve. To love someone is not to own a static image of them, but to witness their journey, even if that journey eventually leads them away from you. I remember a friendship I had in my youth that felt as solid as the ground beneath my feet. We had a decade of shared history, of inside jokes, of late-night conversations where the world seemed to melt away. In my mind, this friendship was a permanent fixture in the architecture of my life. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, things began to change. Life took us down different paths. New cities, new careers, new relationships. The daily calls became weekly, then monthly. The deep talks were replaced by polite, surface-level check-ins. My initial reaction was to fight it. I held on tighter, initiating more calls, trying to force the connection back into its old shape. I was trying to hold the river in my hands, and the more I squeezed, the more it slipped through my fingers. Every unanswered text felt like a personal rejection. Every missed call felt like a betrayal. I was suffering because I was clinging to the past, refusing to accept the present reality. It wasn't until I truly absorbed the Stoic lesson of impermanence that I found peace. I had to mourn the friendship not as a failure, but as a season that had naturally come to an end. I had to let go of the story I had written in my mind, the one where we were friends forever, and accept the story that life was actually writing. The letting go wasn't a single act, it was a process. It involved consciously reminding myself, this is the nature of things. It was beautiful while it lasted, and it is okay for it to be over. This acceptance did not diminish the love I had for my friend or the value of the memories we shared. In fact, it enhanced them. By releasing the need for the friendship to be something it was no longer, I could look back on it with pure gratitude, free from the bitterness of my own resistance. So how do we practice this in our daily lives? The Stoics had a powerful mental exercise, premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of adversity, which we will explore more deeply later. But a simpler, daily practice is to simply observe the nature of change around you. Practice negative visualization gently. Take a moment each day to reflect on the things and people you cherish. Your partner, your family, your closest friend. Gently remind yourself, this is temporary. This moment is precious because it will not last forever. This is not to invite morbidity or anxiety, but to cultivate a deep and profound sense of gratitude. When you stop taking things for granted, you start to truly see them. You listen more attentively. You love more openly. You are more present. Observe the natural world, spend time in nature and watch the ceaseless flow of life. Watch the clouds move across the sky, the leaves fall from the trees, the tide ebb and flow. Nature is a constant, gentle teacher of impermanence. Allow its rhythm to seep into your soul and remind you that you are part of that same rhythm. Reframe your language, pay attention to the words you use in your inner dialogue. Instead of saying, I lost my friend, try saying, the season of our friendship has passed. Instead of, the relationship failed, try, the chapter of that relationship has closed. This subtle shift in language helps to move you from a mindset of victimhood to one of peaceful observation. Emotional detachment, in this context, is not about not forming bonds. It is about forming them with the wisdom of a gardener who knows that every flower blooms in its season and eventually returns to the earth. The gardener does not curse the winter. They understand it is part of the cycle that makes the spring possible. By embracing the impermanence of life, you stop building your happiness on shifting sands. You begin to build it on something far more stable, your own ability to adapt, to appreciate, and to let go with grace. You learn to float in the river of life, trusting that it is carrying you exactly where you need to go, even if the destination is unknown. And in that surrender, you find a strength that clinging could never provide. Section 2, The Dichotomy of Control, Reclaiming Your Inner Citadel. Imagine you are an archer. You have a bow, an arrow, and a target. What parts of this process do you control? You control the quality of your bow and arrow, ensuring they are well maintained. You control your training, the hours you spend practicing your stance, your grip, your release. You control your focus in the moment of the shot, calming your breath and steadying your hand. You control the intention to hit the bullseye. But once the arrow leaves the bow, it is no longer in your hands. A sudden gust of wind might push it off course. The target might unexpectedly move. A bird might fly into its path. These things are entirely outside of your control. The foolish archer, Epictetus would say, is the one who places their happiness and self-worth entirely on whether the arrow hits the bullseye. If it does, they are elated. If it doesn't, they are crushed, blaming the wind, the target, or their own perceived failure. The wise archer, the Stoic archer, places their sense of accomplishment not on the outcome, but on the process. They find satisfaction in having done everything within their power to the best of their ability. They aimed well. They released smoothly. The rest is up to fate. This analogy lies at the heart of what is perhaps the most practical and life-altering principle in all of Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. This is our second rule for emotional detachment. The Stoics believe that all of human suffering stems from a simple confusion: we constantly try to control what we cannot, and we neglect to control what we can. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most revered Stoic teachers, put it with stark clarity in the opening lines of his Enchiridion: some things are within our power, while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. Let's apply this directly to the realm of relationships and emotional attachment. Think about someone you care for deeply. What do you not control? You do not control their feelings for you. You do not control their moods, their reactions, or their decisions. You do not control their past or their future priorities. You do not control whether they stay in your life or leave it. Now, what do you control? You control your own actions, how you treat them, the kindness you show, the support you offer. You control your own thoughts, the meaning you assign to their actions, the stories you tell yourself about the relationship. You control your own boundaries, what you are willing to accept and what you are not. You control your commitment to your own values, regardless of their behavior. The moment you truly internalize this distinction, your entire approach to relationships will transform. You stop being a performer, desperately trying to say and do the right things to elicit a desired emotional response from someone else. You stop pouring your energy into the bottomless pit of trying to change or fix another person. You stop making your peace of mind dependent on their approval, their attention, or their presence. Instead, you start focusing your energy where it actually has an impact, on yourself. You begin to build what the Stoics called your inner citadel, a fortress of the mind built on the foundation of your own thoughts, principles, and choices. The world outside can rage, people can be unpredictable, relationships can end, but your inner citadel remains untouched, because its security does not depend on external conditions. I once worked with a person who was incredibly volatile. One day they would be warm and collaborative, and the next they would be cold, critical, and distant. For a long time, their moods dictated my own. On their good days, I felt confident and valued. On their bad days, I felt anxious and inadequate, constantly re-evaluating my own performance, wondering what I had done wrong. My emotional state was a puppet, and their behavior was pulling the strings. The turning point came when I consciously applied the dichotomy of control. I sat down and made two lists. On one side, things I cannot control, I wrote, my colleague's mood, their opinion of my work, whether they are friendly or not. On the other side, things I can control, I wrote, the quality of my own work, my professionalism in every interaction, my choice not to take their behavior personally, my commitment to being calm and rational, regardless of their emotional state. The next time my colleague had a bad day, instead of getting sucked into their emotional vortex, I focused solely on my list. I did my work diligently. I was polite and professional. And when their negativity came my way, I imagined it as a gust of wind blowing past my inner citadel. It was happening out there, but it did not have to happen in here. The change was immediate and profound. I was no longer exhausted at the end of the day from emotional turmoil. I felt a sense of calm and empowerment, not because they had changed, but because I had stopped giving them the key to my inner peace. This is the essence of Stoic emotional detachment. It is not about building walls to keep people out. It is about building a foundation so strong that no one has the power to knock you over. Practical exercise, the 2-column journal. For 1 week, end each day by drawing 2 columns in a journal. Label one, within my control, and the other, outside my control. List the things that caused you stress or emotional turmoil that day and place them in the appropriate column. Did you worry about a friend's decision? That goes in the outside my control column. Did you snap at a family member out of frustration? Your reaction goes in the within my control column. This simple act of categorization trains your mind to see the world through a Stoic lens, gradually rewiring your focus toward what you can actually influence. Shift your goals from outcomes to actions. Instead of setting a goal like, I want my partner to appreciate me more, an outcome you don't control, set a goal like, this week, I will practice being a more attentive and patient listener, actions you do control. By focusing on your own behavior, you find satisfaction in your own virtue, freeing yourself from the need for a specific response. When you master the dichotomy of control, you stop being a passenger in your emotional life and become the driver. You understand that while you cannot control the weather, you can always adjust your sails. This realization doesn't make you care less about others, it allows you to care more cleanly, more freely, without the desperate need for things to be any way other than how they are. You find strength not in controlling the world, but in mastering yourself. Section 3, Premeditatio Malorum, Preparing the Mind for Loss. Imagine you have a favorite ceramic cup. It's beautiful, it feels perfect in your hands, and drinking your morning coffee from it is a small, daily ritual that brings you joy. Now, what if every time you picked it up, you gently reminded yourself, this is a cup. Cups are fragile. One day, it may break. Most people would recoil from this thought. It seems pessimistic, even morbid. Why invite such negative thoughts into a moment of simple pleasure? But for a Stoic, this is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of profound wisdom and mental preparation. This is the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity, and it is our third rule for emotional detachment. The Stoics taught that the greatest shock of loss comes not from the loss itself, but from the illusion that we were somehow exempt from it. We walk through life assuming that the people we love will always be there, that our health will last, that our stability is guaranteed. And so, when adversity inevitably strikes, a relationship ends, a friend moves away, a loved one falls ill, we are not just hurt, we are shattered. We feel as though the natural order of the world has been violated. Premeditatio malorum is a voluntary, controlled exposure to the idea of loss, designed to inoculate you against the paralyzing shock of it. It's a mental fire drill. You don't practice it because you want your house to burn down, you practice it so that if it ever does, you will know how to get out. Seneca, in a letter to his friend, wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." By contemplating the worst-case scenarios in a calm, rational state, you strip them of their terror. Fear thrives on the unknown. When you make the unknown familiar through contemplation, fear begins to lose its grip. Let's be clear, this is not the same as chronic anxiety. The anxious person is a passive victim of their fearful thoughts. They are swept away by a storm of what-ifs without any sense of control. The Stoic, on the other hand, is an active participant. They are not worrying, they are rehearsing. They are calmly and deliberately looking a potential future in the eye and asking, if this were to happen, how would I endure? What virtues would I need to call upon? What resources do I have to cope? Several years ago, I found myself in a relationship that had become the center of my universe. My happiness, my social life, my future plans, everything revolved around this one person. And with that deep attachment came a deep, underlying fear of losing them. Every small disagreement felt like a potential cataclysm. Every moment of distance sent me into a spiral of insecurity. My emotional well-being was incredibly fragile because it was entirely dependent on something I could not control. It was during this time that I began to seriously practice premeditatio malorum. Each morning, for just a few minutes, would sit in quiet reflection. I would visualize my life without this person. I wouldn't dwell on the pain in a self-pitying way, but I would walk through the practicalities. What would my days look like? Which friends would I reconnect with? What hobbies, long neglected, would I pick up again? What would it feel like to be alone, and how would I find strength and contentment within that solitude? At first, the exercise was painful. It felt like I was inviting heartbreak. But over time, something remarkable happened. The fear began to recede. By facing the possibility of the breakup, I was unknowingly proving to myself that I could survive it. I was mentally building a life that was whole and meaningful on its own, a life that was not just a satellite orbiting someone else. When the relationship did eventually end, the pain was still real. There is no Stoic trick to erase the sting of loss. But the devastation, the sense of utter collapse that I had so feared, was absent. I had already rehearsed this. I had already built the foundations of a life that could stand on its own. The fire drill had worked. How to practice premeditatio malorum safely. Set aside a specific time. Do this not when you are already feeling anxious, but when you are in a calm and rational state of mind, perhaps for 5 minutes in the morning. Start small, begin with minor losses. Imagine your car breaking down, spilling coffee on your shirt before a big meeting, or losing your internet connection for a day. Ask yourself, how would I handle this with virtue, with patience, with resourcefulness, with good humor? Move to greater losses. As you become more comfortable with the practice, you can move on to contemplating more significant losses, the end of a job, a friendship, or a romantic relationship. The goal is not to trigger panic, but to foster resilience. Focus on your response. The most important part of the exercise is not just to imagine the negative event, but to visualize yourself responding to it with strength and grace. See yourself being calm, rational, and virtuous in the face of adversity. This is not just about preparing for loss, it is about training to be your best self when it matters most. Return to gratitude. Always end the exercise by returning your focus to the present and feeling a deep sense of gratitude for what you have right now. By contemplating its potential absence, you make its present existence all the more vivid and precious. Practicing premeditatio malorum does not make you a pessimist. It makes you a realist. It allows you to love more freely and deeply, because your love is no longer tainted by the fear of loss. You are free to enjoy the beauty of the ceramic cup, to savor the warmth of your coffee, while holding the quiet, calm knowledge that if it breaks, you will endure. This is the resilient heart of a Stoic. Section 4, From Reaction to Response, the Sacred Power of the Pause. Think about the last time someone said something that triggered you. A sharp criticism from a colleague, a dismissive comment from a partner, an unjust accusation. What happened in the moments that followed? For most of us, the process is instantaneous and automatic. The trigger is pulled, and an emotional reaction fires off before we even have a chance to think. Our heart rate quickens, our face flushes, and words, often ones we later regret, come tumbling out. We become a puppet of our own emotions. The Stoics understood that true freedom is not found in a life free of triggers, but in the ability to create a space between the trigger and our reaction. This space, this sacred pause, is where our power lies. It is the moment where we can move from being a mindless reactor to a conscious responder. This is our fourth rule of emotional detachment: master the pause. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, captured this idea perfectly. Though he wasn't a Stoic by name, his philosophy was forged in the same fires of adversity. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Our initial, knee-jerk reactions are often the product of our primal brain, the amygdala, the center of fear and aggression. They are driven by ego, insecurity, and past wounds. When someone criticizes us, our ego feels threatened, and it screams, "Defend yourself. Attack back." When someone pulls away, our fear of abandonment is triggered, and it pleads, "Cling tighter. Don't let them go." A person who lives at the mercy of these reactions is not free. They are a slave to every external event and every internal impulse. They are emotionally volatile, easily manipulated, and constantly creating their own suffering. The Stoic, however, trains themselves to inhabit that space Frankl spoke of. When the stimulus arrives, the hurtful word, the disappointing action, they do not immediately react. They pause. They breathe. They create a moment of stillness. In that moment, they allow the initial emotional wave to rise and pass, without being swept away by it. And from that place of calm observation, they can engage their rational mind, their prefrontal cortex, to choose a response. A response that is aligned with their values, their long-term goals, and their commitment to inner peace. I once had a very difficult conversation with a family member. They were leveling criticisms at me that felt deeply unfair and personal. My immediate, visceral reaction was a surge of defensive anger. My body tensed, and a dozen sharp retorts formed on my tongue. The old version of me would have unleashed them without a second thought, and the conversation would have devolved into a shouting match, causing a rift that could have lasted for months. But in that moment, I remembered my Stoic practice. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I could feel the anger coursing through me, but I didn't act on it. I just watched it. In that pause, which probably only lasted 5 seconds but felt like an eternity, I was able to access a different part of myself. I asked internally, what is the most virtuous way to respond right now? Will escalating this argument bring me closer to the relationship I want with this person, or will it push us further apart? From that space of clarity, I chose a different path. Instead of fighting back, I calmly said, "I hear that you're upset, and I'm trying to understand your perspective. It sounds like what you're saying is..." I didn't agree with the criticisms, but I responded with a desire to understand rather than a need to win. The shift in the energy of the conversation was immediate. The anger on their side began to dissipate, replaced by a willingness to actually communicate. By controlling my reaction, I had guided the entire interaction toward a more constructive outcome. I had chosen freedom over instinct. This is not easy. It requires diligent, daily practice. But it is a skill that can be developed. Practical techniques for mastering the pause. The 3-breath rule: whenever you feel a strong emotional reaction rising, before you say or do anything, commit to taking 3 slow, deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This simple physiological act helps to calm your nervous system and gives your rational mind a chance to catch up with your emotional brain. Physical distancing: if possible, physically remove yourself from the triggering situation for a few minutes. Step into another room, go for a short walk, or simply turn away. This creates both physical and mental space, allowing the initial emotional intensity to fade. Ask a Stoic question. In the pause, ask yourself a question that engages your higher mind. Questions like: is my reaction based on fact or on my interpretation? Will this matter in a year? In 5 years? What would the best version of myself do right now? Delay your response. In the digital age, we feel pressure to respond to texts and emails instantly. This is a training ground for impulsivity. Practice letting a triggering message sit for an hour, or even a day, before you reply. Give yourself time to craft a response that is thoughtful and rational, not emotional and reactive. Emotional detachment is not about feeling nothing, it is about not being controlled by what you feel. By mastering the pause, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a leaf blown about by the winds of circumstance and become the tree, rooted in your own deliberate choices. In that sacred space between stimulus and response, you will not just find your freedom, you will forge your character. Section 5, Amor Fati, Loving Your Fate, Even When It Hurts. There is a final, and perhaps most challenging, step in the Stoic art of emotional detachment. We have learned to accept impermanence, to focus on what we control, to prepare for loss, and to master our reactions. But what do we do with the things that have already happened? The losses we couldn't prevent, the heartbreaks that have already scarred us, the difficult realities of our lives that we cannot change. Do we simply tolerate them? Do we endure them with gritted teeth? The Stoics proposed something far more radical, a concept that the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche would later call amor fati, a love of one's fate. This is our fifth and final rule, not just to accept, but to embrace everything that happens as necessary, and even good. This is, without a doubt, the most difficult Stoic principle to practice, especially in the face of profound pain. It asks us to look at the very things that have broken us and say, thank you. I would not have it any other way. It sounds impossible, even absurd. How can one love the fate that brings illness, betrayal, or the loss of a loved one? To understand this, we must understand the Stoic view of the universe. They believed in the logos, a divine reason or natural order that permeates everything. Every event, no matter how chaotic or painful it appears to us from our limited perspective, is a necessary and integral part of this cosmic whole. To wish for something to have been different is to wish for the entire universe to be different. It is, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, to be like an abscess on the body of the world, a part that is at war with the whole. He wrote in his meditations, all that is in accord with you is in accord with me, O universe. Nothing which occurs at the right time for you is too early or too late for me. This is the heart of amor fati. It is a deep and abiding trust that everything that happens for us, not to us. Not in the sense of a simplistic everything happens for a reason platitude, but in a much deeper sense, every event provides the raw material for us to practice virtue. Every obstacle is an opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient. As Marcus Aurelius put it, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. A fire is not stopped by an obstacle in its path, the obstacle becomes fuel that makes the fire burn hotter. For a Stoic, adversity is that fuel. I know a woman who was diagnosed with a chronic, debilitating illness in her early 20s. Her life, which had been full of promise and ambition, was suddenly circumscribed by pain and physical limitations. For years, she lived in a state of bitterness and resentment. She was at war with her own body, with her fate. She mourned the life she had lost and was unable to live the one she had. Her transformation began when she encountered Stoic philosophy and the idea of amor fati. She realized that her suffering was not coming just from the illness itself, but from her constant resistance to it. She was spending all of her energy wishing for a different reality. She decided to try an experiment. For 1 month, she would stop fighting. She would try to embrace her fate. She started to see her illness not as a curse, but as a teacher. The pain taught her the limits of her body and the boundless capacity of her mind. The limitations taught her to find joy in the smallest things, the warmth of the sun on her face, a conversation with a friend, a single page of a good book. The illness, which had been the obstacle to her life, became the path of her life. She became a writer, sharing her journey with a depth of compassion and wisdom she never would have accessed without her suffering. She would later say, "My illness took my old life from me, and for that, I am grateful. Because it gave me a life that is infinitely more meaningful." She had learned to love her fate. This is the ultimate form of emotional detachment. You are detaching yourself not just from people or outcomes, but from your own preferences. You are letting go of the idea that life should be a certain way and learning to love it for what it is. How to cultivate amor fati. Reframe past hardships, look back on the most difficult times in your life. The breakup that broke your heart, the failure that humbled you, the loss that brought you to your knees. Now, ask yourself, what did I learn from that? How did I grow stronger because of it? What positive changes in my life came about as an indirect result of that pain? See if you can find the hidden gift in the wound. Say good to minor annoyances. The next time something small goes wrong, you're stuck in traffic, your flight is delayed, it starts to rain on your picnic, instead of getting frustrated, practice saying, good. Stuck in traffic? Good. An opportunity to listen to this podcast or practice my breathing. Flight delayed? Good. More time to read. This small linguistic trick trains your mind to automatically look for the opportunity in every obstacle. Contemplate the view from above. When you are feeling overwhelmed by your personal struggles, practice the Stoic meditation of the view from above. Imagine yourself floating up, out of your room, above your city, above your country, until you are looking down at the entire planet as a small blue marble in the vastness of space. From this cosmic perspective, see your own life, your own problems, as a tiny, fleeting part of an immense and ancient story. This helps to dissolve the ego's sense of self-importance and fosters a sense of acceptance of your small but necessary place in the grand scheme of things. Amor fati is not a denial of pain. It is the alchemy of turning pain into purpose. It is the ultimate act of taking control, not by changing your circumstances, but by choosing to love them. When you can look at your entire life, the triumphs and the tragedies, the joys and the sorrows, and say, I would have it no other way, then you have achieved a level of freedom and peace that very few ever know. You are no longer a victim of your life story. You are its co-creator, in love with the beautiful, terrible, and perfect unfolding of it all. Conclusion: the unshakable soul. We began this journey with the image of a ghost, the heavy presence of an absence, the emotional weight of clinging to what is gone. We have walked a path paved with the wisdom of the Stoics, not as a collection of ancient, dusty ideas, but as a set of practical, powerful tools for living in the modern world. We learn to embrace the impermanence of all things, to see life not as a static photograph but as a flowing river, finding gratitude in the transient beauty of each moment. We reclaimed our power by focusing on the dichotomy of control, understanding that our freedom lies not in managing external events, but in mastering our own minds. We built resilience through premeditatio malorum, rehearsing for loss not to invite it, but to strip it of its power to shatter us. We discovered our agency in the sacred pause, creating a space between trigger and reaction where we can choose reason over impulse. And finally, we reached for the highest form of acceptance with amor fati, learning not just to endure our fate, but to love it, turning every obstacle into fuel for our growth. The Stoic art of emotional detachment is not a journey toward emptiness, but toward a profound and unshakable fullness. It is the process of building an inner citadel so strong, so well fortified with reason, virtue, and acceptance, that the chaos of the world can rage outside its walls without disturbing the peace within. This is not a path you walk once. It is a daily practice. It is the choice, made every morning, to meet the day with awareness. It is the discipline, in every interaction, to pause and choose your response. It is the courage, in the face of pain, to ask what it has come to teach you. You do not need to be a Roman emperor or an exiled philosopher to live this way. You only need to make the choice. The choice to stop being a slave to your emotions, to stop handing the keys to your happiness to other people, to stop wishing for a different life and start living the one you have with courage, purpose, and even love. So, as we conclude, I invite you to take a moment. Think of the emotional weight you were carrying when you began this video. See if you can, just for a moment, set it down. See if you can look at it not as a part of you, but as a stone you have been choosing to carry. You have the power to let it go. Not through force, but through understanding. The journey to an unshakable soul is long, but it begins with a single step. Let this be that step. Thank you for walking this path with me. Continue to explore these lessons. Live them, practice them, and build a life of such deep, quiet strength that you become a source of peace not only for yourself, but for everyone around you. If this journey has resonated with you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What is one Stoic principle you will commit to practicing this week? Your story and your commitment can inspire others on their own path. And if you wish to continue this exploration of timeless wisdom for modern life, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Be Audio for more content that empowers you to build your best life from the inside out. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, and stay stoic.